Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Tevis-Finn recording from Franklin. Let's get to the Great Depression. This is our last section, and it's titled The New Deal, Controversy and Legacy. So I'd like you to follow along with your Great Depression Part 3 guided notes, and for today's lecture you're going to have to follow along and figure out what you want to write down. So this is what you do in the real world when a teacher goes over a topic. This is what I did last summer at Stanford. So do your best, guys. Try to keep up. There will be some information on the slides you can directly copy, and other things I'll stress with my voice, and you can pause me, but try to follow along the best you can. So under number 1, President Hoover and President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So let's contrast these two men. Hoover was very educated. He was known in the international scene. He was idealistic, and he also, because of his international experience, wanted to deal with the Great Depression on an international scale. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, pictured there on the right, is a former governor and state senator of New York, so he had more of the domestic experience. He was from a very wealthy family. He's a polio victim. Pictured here in his wheelchair, this is probably the only photograph you can find. So he did not want to be photographed as weak, and he certainly disagreed with Hoover's approach to dealing with the Great Depression. So a couple more things that show their differences. Franklin Roosevelt is known for saying, "The only efforts made by Hoover to cope with the distress of unemployment was to deny its existence." So this is some of the stuff you may find in a traditional textbook. People always say that Hoover believed in the rugged individualism. People should pull themselves up by their own way, by their own means. But this really was not true. I think it really shows Franklin's bias against Hoover. In my class at Stanford, we learned how Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually stole Herbert Hoover's ideas. For example, Hoover really tried to help the farmers in the 20s. So we also know that Franklin Delano Roosevelt ignored Hoover's pleas that the Great Depression was an international crisis. FDR really just tried to shut out the world and their problems and only focus on the domestic crisis at home. So, what is the crisis? So I wanted to show you this picture. It looks pretty nice on this cold day, a nice baseball field in the sun. But I chose this for a reason. For in my class on the Great Depression that I took, we use this as a metaphor. So just imagine, every Saturday this stadium fills up with 85,000 people. And those people really, guys, are heads of household, obviously mostly male, and they all lose their jobs on that day. And then 2 out of 3, you guys, really cannot get a job for the next 4 years. And so every Saturday, guys, this stadium fills up again with 85,000 people. And again, it's repeated. Every head of household loses their job. This happens for 4 years. So we just really can't comprehend the staggering loss of this time period. But I thought this picture could help. And this really goes along with, who was FDR. So I chose these 2 pictures for a reason. There's a great quote that says, "I didn't know him, but he knew me." So it really shows how FDR was able to reach out to everyone. One way he did that was through his fireside chats. He would talk on the radio, and people felt close to him. You guys should know the post office had to increase monumentally to handle the volume of letters that were written by American citizens to the President and also to the First Lady, Eleanor. So guys, the picture on the right I chose, I know it jumps ahead to 1945, but it really is famous, and it depicts how connected the American people felt to their President. Okay guys, so what is the New Deal? So number 2 in your guided notes. Now I want you guys to make sure you write down a couple things. So this actual program is called the New Deal. It's during his first 2 administrations. It's relief, recovery, and reform. And I want you to know this quote. So this is in his cabinet. His main advisor, FDR's main advisor, is Harry Hopkins. And he is known for saying, "Give a man a handout and you save his body but destroy his spirit. Give him a job and pay him an assured wage and you save both the body and the spirit." So I want you to reflect on the film Cinderella Man and what it's like for Jimmy Braddock to have to go ask for money, and what it's like when he can actually get a job and pay for his bills himself. Number 3, the Glass-Steagall Act and FDIC. So guys, there was a major banking crisis which we learned about in leading up to the Great Depression. Banks had failed hundreds per year in the 20s and thousands in the 1930s. So once elected, FDR takes control, and in the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which is part of this Glass-Steagall Act, he closes all banks for 5 days. He only allows them to reopen if they have sufficient funds for customers. So really the federal government becomes the anchor and immediately eases people's anxiety and insecurity, and so bank runs stop. And so what is the FDIC? It's the federal government guarantees depositors money. They stand behind up to $3,000 at that time, and it's financed on a minimum tax. Alright, so let's move on to number 4. So the Federal Emergency Relief Act. So guys, this is in 1933, and what it does is puts federal money into state relief agencies. We see this in the movie. Here's a picture down below of when Jimmy actually gets money to pay for his heat. And on the right here is an actual picture from 1935 of men standing in line in New Orleans for help from FARA. So remember the quote from Harry Hopkins, you just can't give money out because it doesn't lead to true recovery. And so one way to help Americans in the 1930s is to put them to work. And so not just federal money went to relief agencies, but it also went into public works programs to build bridges, dams, and roads. So I gave you guys one example. There are many agencies that are formed, but the Civilian Conservation Corps. So I'm on number 5. It employs 2.5 million young unmarried men in beach and forestry maintenance. They get housed in camps, pictured here, and they receive a $30 stipend each month for their work. So what is the legacy of the New Deal? I think this is an important concept, that just strictly giving people money isn't beneficial for them or for our society. So, saving the spirit. But who's traveled to Florida? So I want you guys to know a few things that come from this era. So the roads and bridges for Route 1 through the Florida Keys is a public works project from this time. And next time you guys go to the Cape, here's the Bourne Bridge and also the Sagamore are public works projects that were done during the Great Depression. And so really, why do I say this? Thousands of people get a chance to work and start over during this time period. The next crisis FDR has to deal with is the stock market crisis. So why did I have a picture of J.P. Morgan? Well, he is one of our robber barons. That's put in quotes because really he made so much money illegally. He had free reign. It was really laissez-faire in the economic world to commit fraud. So before 1929, he didn't have to report to the public about his company. He had his own people on a board of directors. So really there were no reforms up until FDR. And so the Securities Act of 1934 comes, and it creates the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC. So I want you guys to know why it's so important. Companies needed permission now from the government to go public. Remember, when you go public, you're making stocks or shares in your company available. So it's requiring public disclosure, right? You have to have all of your information certified so that people can know what you're up to. So no, you can't hide it anymore like J.P. Morgan did. So that data, guys, I'm talking about, like the health of your company, sales, for example, has to be authenticated by a third-party auditor. So a private sector has to, certify the accuracy of your business records, and any errors will be published. So moving on to number 6, I have a question for you. How did the poor pay their bills? So before the reforms of the Great Depression, many people, here's a picture from England, but we did this in our own country, were sent to a workhouse or a poorhouse if they couldn't pay their bills. Note some of the ages of the women. Alright, so guys, for number 6, I do want you to know the Social Security Act came in 1935. It's during his second administration. And prior to the 1930s, the concept of retirement was unknown. People really worked until they were unable to work. Certainly lifespan was shorter, but families also took care of the elderly. And so FDR is trying to figure out, how to take care of people when they age and also how to provide insurance for them if they lose their job. So he creates a system that's financed by matched, and I underline that, it's important, matched contributions by employer and employee. Remember, he's not just doing a handout. He stresses that it's not a civil right, this Social Security account, but a property right that you earn by working. And in number 7, the Homeowners Loan Corporation. FDR also has to deal with the housing crisis. Remember, many people were homeless during the Great Depression. So banks took back people's homes. So what this does is establish to keep people in their homes, and it's keeping lending agencies, right, the banks, in business. So what the government does is kind of take the mortgages off the hands of the bank to refinance them at better interest rates. Alright guys, for number 7, I put this out of order, so just make sure you guys know Fannie Mae is there. Make sure you know it's not a woman. It's the name of this national lending agency that is created from the Homeowners Loan Corporation. So what it does is it takes the mortgages from the original lender, from the bank that's not doing well, and it spreads the risk out, right, by putting it into a new bank. The government helps by making a pool that the banks can pay into, and so it's like a seed money. So Fannie Mae then becomes the lender for these mortgages. Important to know, before the New Deal, you had to either pay full cash for your home or make a down payment of 30 to 50%. That is impossible. So under all of this, guys, in that middle part of 7 is the Federal Housing Administration. So I want you to know the changes that come about is now they allow a 7% down payment, which really made house purchasing much more accessible. So, before the Great Depression, mortgages would be shorter because it was, you had to pay more up front. So now you can make your mortgage last, 15 years, 25, my mortgage is for 30 years. Alright, last but certainly not least, what is the psychological effect of the Great Depression? And so I want you to note some statistics, see if I can talk. If you look at the numbers from the census, marriage rates, divorce rates, and birth rates all go down in the 1930s. People just do not feel secure enough to grow their families. Here's an important book I have pictured on the right, The Employed Man and His Family. So it's a really important social psychological study on the effect of shame, right? How mortifying it was for the breadwinner to let his family down. And during my class on the Great Depression, my professor told a story I'll never forget. It was about his father, who was in a mining camp in the 1930s that went bankrupt. They were isolated in the middle of nowhere. They didn't have him until the 40s when times were better. But he told how his father was so depressed that he actually began to molt. I don't know if you guys know, but molting is when your skin and your hair starts to fall out. So that certainly stuck with me. I'll never forget the story. And I chose this picture too to show the pros and cons of individualism. So back during President Jackson, Alexis de Tocqueville came from France and studied our country. He discovered this unique sense of individualism. In our country, we make our own destiny, he found. And this possibly could link to why Americans truly felt that they were to blame for their struggles in the 1930s. It also might explain why Americans did not rise up in rebellion, right, during the 1930s. They were pretty passive. It also helps explain why the Great Depression lasted as long as it did. And I'd like to leave you with this question, how long was the Great Depression? When did it end? And so I'm going to leave you with World War II, our next unit. Why do you think World War II brought us out of the Depression? Signing off. Have a great night.